Welcome into a Thursday afternoon edition of the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. Jason is gallivanting in New England with his wife for their anniversary birthday trip, which means I'm calling in the replacement. It is Justin Rowan from the Chase Down Pod joining us today. Justin, this is the back end of a home and home. I did the Chase Down Pod with you last night. Now you're joining us on the Ultimate Cav Show, and you're in Canada. So let me ask, how are things going today up in the great northern country?
Hey, still pretty good. We don't have snow yet. I'm feeling great. I feel honored anytime I'm stepping into Jason's shoes. Big shoes to fill, but hopefully I can do my best here.
Big shoes, depending on who you ask. Jason's he'll be back next week. But Justin, we got a lot to dive into. We spent a big portion of last night's Chase Down Pod dissecting the loss of the Celtics, getting into the minutia of that game. So if you want to hear Justin and I's takes on that game in particular, go check out the latest episode of the Chase Down Pod. But what we're going to do today, Justin, is take some concerns we have had over the first 5 games. A lot of these came from our discussion last night. Some have just come from general conversation I've had with people in the gym, out in the street. Some have come from Twitter. And we're going to figure out, are these real concerns that the Cavaliers have to address and figure out? Or are these just little hiccups in the road 5 games into a season where they're making so many changes? So that's kind of the premise of today's show. And let's dive into concern number 1. And that is the rebounding battle. I'm not quite sure if you heard some of Kenny Atkinson's quotes after the loss last night. We were live on air. I didn't catch it in the moment, but he essentially said that was our number 1 emphasis pregame. We harped on it in the locker room before we went out there, and we got our butts kicked. We got physically dominated. We got hustle dominated, and Boston wanted it more, and it was an inexcusable effort for us on the glass. I'm paraphrasing here what Kenny said, but essentially he made it very clear. They knew rebounding was going to be the determining factor in that game. They harped on it and preached it before the game and then did not come out with the necessary effort to win the rebounding battle. In fact, through 5 games, they've won the rebounding battle just once, Justin. So I'll let you start on this one. The Cavs' rebounding issues through 5 games. Is that a legitimate concern or just a silly blip in the radar through 5 games?
I think anytime, Kenny's comments there about it being a point of emphasis and them not executing is what makes it more of a concern than the fact that they've been out rebounded, in my opinion, right? Like, if you are going into a game plan and you are specifically trying to work on one thing and try to make it a strength against a Boston team that's not a good rebounding team and it ends up being a weakness, you have to feel some concern, right? That at least at this point they're not on the same page. From a macro standpoint, is it something that I'm incredibly concerned about? No, because from a personnel standpoint, this Cavs team should be a better rebounding team than they were last year, right? You have Larry Nance coming in off the bench as that third big. You have Dean Wade, who they've always been able to rebound really well with him alongside one of the big. You have Lonzo Ball that's an event guy out there that's going to accumulate a lot of rebounds. Jaylon Tyson's a good rebounder for his position. This shouldn't be an issue, and it wasn't an issue last year. This was the second best defensive rebounding team in the playoffs last year. Defensive rebounding hasn't been an issue for them really since that Knicks series, outside of the odd game or two. So it's something that is a focus. It's something that we know that they can do, but it's just concerning to see them not execute something that was supposed to be a point of emphasis on a given game.
Yeah, I do think it is something they have to at least keep an eye on. And clearly Kenny and the staff have by his post-game comments. I love the part where he said, I basically did everything I could to tell our guys rebounding is going to be important other than flying a plane with a banner across it over Boston. And maybe I'll do that next time. Like that goes to show how much of an emphasis they put on there. And I'm going to take all the nerdy stats out of this. Sometimes rebounding just comes down to effort. It does. Yeah. And some of the best rebounders in the history of this league have not been the tallest guys. And you look at a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who's at 7'4", is by no means an elite rebounder. And just because you're tall, it certainly helps. It gives you an advantage on the glass. But a lot of it's about positioning, knowing where to be, putting a body on a body, boxing a guy out, and having more effort to go attack of loose basketball than your opponent. And it's been disappointing that so many times throughout the first 5 games, the Cavs have been on the wrong side of that effort battle. Last night was a perfect example of another effort battle where I thought it was completely lopsided for the opponent over the Cavs. Some of the long rebounds have been an Achilles heel early on. That falls on the guards, not necessarily the bigs. But even the bigs haven't rebounded up to the standard that we expect. And Justin, I know you tweeted out some numbers this morning. I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'll let you get to that in a sec. But they have 2 7-footers who should both be good rebounders. They're both long, athletic, coordinated. not stiff. That should translate to rebounding. I think part of the reason they don't grab as many rebounds is just kind of the mental desire to say, F it, this is my board, not yours. And Jared and Evan, both kind of passive people by nature. Maybe that plays a role into it. I don't know, but I do think this is an actual concern. I don't think it's a blow it up, we have to eject level concern, but I am a little worried just at the lack of effort on the glass through 5 games.
Yeah, the biggest thing is when you're not defensive rebounding well, it decreases your margin for error, right? Like you're giving the other team other chances to score. Oklahoma City, another team that uses 2 bigs very prominently, is a really bad defensive rebounding team. Like that's one of their main flaws. So it's not a fatal flaw necessarily, but when you don't have, that bona fide MVP type guy like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you can't do anything to decrease your margin for error. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to the rebounding is defensive rebound is your reward for doing everything, for checking all the boxes off on a defensive possession. And I think more than the individual battles on the defense, the defensive glass, I think where the first point of failure is more on the perimeter defense. When you see the overhelping and the scrambling and the situations where these bigs are forced to help on a driver, that takes them out of rebounding position. When you're jumping up to contest a floater as a Jared Allen or an Evan Mobley, that is taking you out of defensive rebounding position. And I think that's where it really shows when you kind of look at some of the lineup data, because right now, when Mobley and Allen are out there together on the court, the defensive rebounding rate, they're in the 89th percentile. That's terrific, right?
Yeah,
like
that run to the bank.
That's not an issue at all. And I think it also shows that when you have 2 bigs out there and they're both covering for everybody on the perimeter, it allows them to still have someone that is in defensive rebounding position. Where the issues are really coming up right now are in those 1 big lineups where you only have that 1 backline defender. And the defense has been in a constant scramble mode where, hey, if you have Jaylon Tyson getting blown by on the perimeter and Jared Allen's the only big out there, him contesting the shot is going to take him out of that defensive rebounding position. So 89th percentile with both of those bigs out there. When it's Mobley only, 12th percentile. When it's Allen only, 32nd percentile. Neither of those are going to cut it. And given the personnel that they have, mentioning Nance, Wade, Lonzo, all those guys, it's better than it was last year where it wasn't an issue. So to me, the biggest change is that the integrity of their defensive perimeter hasn't been intact the same way it was last year. And I think that is putting the team in scramble mode and taking them out of position to end those possessions and secure the defensive rebound.
Yeah, when they're playing an aggressive style of defense, which we're going to talk about in the very next concern we have, they're picking up further than they ever have before, which brings your guards away from the bucket, which puts even more pressure on Allen and Mobley to grab those defensive rebounds. And to your point, when they're in those 1 big lineups, right, and the guys on the perimeter are getting blown by and Mobley or Allen are stepping up, that leaves Hunter, Wade, the 2 guards, whoever else is on the court around them, to block everybody out. And they just haven't done a good enough job through 5 games yet. Whether it's a long-term concern or not, through the first 5 games, I think we could both agree. Just not good enough yet. Concern number 2, Justin, is that new defensive philosophy Kenny Atkinson and company are unveiling this year. We talked about it all offseason. They were a passive defense last year. They kind of sat in their zones. They were letting people walk to the 3-point line before setting up their offense. They were conceding switches. It worked. They won 64 regular season games, but they decided this summer that they wanted to follow some of the trends in the NBA, learn a little bit from Indiana, pick up people a lot further up the court, force them into starting their offense from a spot that they're not trying to start their offense, burn an extra second or 2 off the shot clock before they get into their action, try to be more aggressive. They went from being passive to being aggressive, Justin. And we've seen some mixed results thus far. The game against Detroit, it looked incredible. Detroit doesn't have a ton of ball handlers, which I think allowed Cleveland to ramp it up even more and put Detroit kind of in a hell torture chamber. And then you see games like last night against Boston where frankly speaking, it backfired. So how concerned are you? Is it a real concern or is it just early season learning curves that this Cavaliers defense through 5 games has not been up to the standard that Kenny Atkinson expects?
I would say a lot of these changes are worthwhile. I think it's worthwhile to experiment with them and to figure out what you can and can't get away with from your a personnel standpoint. And obviously, some of this is going to come down to your personnel, right? Like if you look at Basketball Index in terms of perimeter isolation defense, a lot of the guys that, were in the Cavs top 6 in that metric last year haven't been available. DeAndre Hunter was the best at it. Obviously, Isaac Okoro was up there as well. He's no longer on the team. But from there, it's Darius Garland. It's Max Strus, right? Like those were the other two in the top 4. So not having them is going to have some impact. And that's an area where Jaylon Tyson has really struggled. Last year, a lot of the times they would have Donovan Mitchell and Sam Merrill off ball because both of them are much better as off ball defenders, right? From a screen navigation standpoint, more activity in the passing lanes. While Darius Garland, not very good at those off ball situations of getting steals, but did hold up really well at the point of attack in terms of keeping his man in front of him and keeping that defensive shell intact. So I'm okay with the Cavs taking on a new philosophy of trying to make teams more uncomfortable defensively rather than sitting back in the shell. I like the fact that how they are approaching, screen situations, they're not giving up the soft switching to the same extent that they were last year. That is all worthwhile. And if there's growing pains associated with that, I'm comfortable with that because I think that's something that can pay off long-term dividends.
Yeah, I don't think this is a
what we
concern.
saw last night against Boston, I don't think that was that. When you're helping off the strong side corner, when you're over helping and scrambling to the extent that we saw, I don't think that was struggles in the service of a long-term goal that this team is trying to achieve. I think it was breakdowns in communication and execution issues rather than a change in a scheme approach.
Yeah, this is in terms of how big of a concern versus not a concern. Obviously, you want your defense to look better. Obviously.
Yeah.
But we knew when you change an entire defensive philosophy and are missing some key defensive players, and frankly, I'm not 100% certain they have the defensive personnel to run the style of defense they want to run. I knew it would be a little choppy early on. And I'm going to take what you said last night, Justin, and put it in a more relatable term for myself because I don't golf. But you talked about when you change your golf swing, you're going to shank a few, you're going to put a few in the rough, but the end result will be worth it. I don't golf. Even when I change my golf swing, it doesn't go straight. When I hit the ball well, it still goes into the rough. So I'm going to use an example that maybe some people can relate to, maybe they can't. But when I was in Texas, barbecue's big in Texas, right? Everyone has to barbecue. If you don't barbecue yourself, even if it's in your own oven, which doesn't really count, but you know what you make do because you're broke kid working in TV, you got to barbecue. So you buy a brisket at H-E-B and you try about 13 different recipes, different temperatures, different rubs, different sauces. Do you inject it? Do you not? Until you find out how to make brisket you actually like, right? And I went through a couple of horrific briskets, Justin, before I got to brisket that I felt acceptable to share with my friends. And this to me is equivalent to those first rounds of horrible briskets. You had to go through that trial and error to get to a stage where you felt it was acceptable. And had I not gone through that trial and error, I may never gotten to the point where I thought I made a decent brisket. And for this Cavs team to get to the defensive identity they want to play with later in the season, and keyword there, want to and later in the season, they're going to have to go through some early season struggles to see who can pick up guys full court without fouling, who can stay in front of guys on the perimeter, who can be paired up with a single big lineup to help corral defensive rebounds, who won't overhelp, who won't help off the strong side drive. All those things have to happen in a trial and error basis to get to the end result here. So yes, it has not been pretty through the first 5 games, but I kind of expected that, and I think it will look better and better and better as these guys get more reps in this kind of defensive system.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? Like issues in service of a long-term goal, you live with that, right? Like even the balancing act with Evan Mobley of trying to figure out what that right balance is for him as an offensive player. How much isolation do you want in there? How many easy buckets at the rim do you want to, scheme up in terms of him running pick and roll? How many times do you want to use him as a hub, right? Like finding out what that perfect balance is going to come with growing pains. But what we saw last night was something that we've seen before with this Cavs team, right? Like sometimes they do just come out and have a dud. A lot of the time, it's when they underestimate their opponent, right? Like I think back to, a couple of years ago when they were playing the Knicks, they came out with a lot of focus. Jalen Brunson gets hurt early in the game, and then they just take their foot off the gas.
Yep.
Or playing against the Warriors backups, or a lot of these matchups where the other team is shorthanded. And right now, the Cavs can't have that mentality. They're the ones that are shorthanded. They need to come out with that focus. And I almost think that early game, stretch, that first quarter where they're just hitting everything from the outside, almost reinforced those bad habits of, hey, we can turn it on when we need to. Offense is rolling right now, but the process wasn't as good as the results. And the results started catching up to the process, while those bad habits ended up biting them in the butt.
We'll get to Mobley in a second, but for the next concern, let's look big picture with this Cavs offense. And let's talk about the shot selection. Last night, 52 threes in 84 attempts. They've had the second fewest field goal attempts at the rim per game this season, which is a far cry from where they were last year. The free-flowing ball movement, attack, get 2 feet in the paint, kick out offense that we saw the Cavs execute at a historic level last season appears to be nowhere to be found through the first 5 games, Justin. So let me ask the question we've asked twice already. How concerned are you with the Cavs' early season shot selection? Should it be something that they have to really hammer home or hone in on, or is this just the result of a wonky in and out lineup and growing pains to start the year?
I'm mildly concerned just because this was a concern coming into the season of, do they have enough ball handlers, or do they have enough ball handlers specifically that can get 2 feet into the paint, right? Lonzo Ball, for all his playmaking talents and like some of what he does is absolutely brilliant. Like, I'm a massive fan of what he does, but it would be a misunderstanding to think of him as a traditional pick and roll ball handler that's going to put pressure on the rim and create opportunities for the big man, as well as, kick out opportunities on the perimeter. That's not really his game. Donovan, really good playmaker for a shooting guard, but we have seen, particularly when he feels like he needs to shoulder, a substantial burden, we've seen times where he'll go away from passing to the bigs, where he's not creating in the pick and roll situations. I think back to game 2 against Indiana, he's exhausted at the end of the game, and Jared Allen, who had a massive game, did not really get those touches in the second half, right? Like, sometimes the tunnel vision will happen when too much burden is put on his shoulders. Now, you're missing 2 guys that are really good at that, right? Darius Garland is one of the best at that in the league. Max Strus, talk about growing pains that we saw in the past. 2 years ago, his first season in Cleveland, where all the point guards were hurt or unavailable, he really struggled with his efficiency, but he developed a lot of that pick and roll ball handling in that season. He was forced to play point guard, and we saw the dividends pay off both later in that season and last season, where he was able to do that. I do wonder if, from a personnel standpoint, they just don't have enough guys that can do that, or that they're currently not playing them. We'll probably get to him a little bit later, but I think one of the bright spots has been Craig Porter Jr. He is someone that is going to generate that rim pressure and create some of those opportunities. I like what I've seen from Tyrese Proctor. That's a guy who I think the process has been better than the results. So maybe there is that answer internally, and it's going to take some change up in terms of who they are using at the guard spots. But right now, it is at least a little bit of a concern that, hey, if we don't have the personnel to do that on an individual basis, we're going to have to scheme up these possessions through the system, right? Like, we're going to need to have off-ball situations and get guys, attacking the basket as cutters and find other ways to generate this, because we don't have the individual talent to initiate in that way.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think it is a concern, but I also think it's been exasperated and magnified because it's been 5 games. Evan Mobley's still figuring out his role, and they don't have Darius and Strus, and they missed DeAndre Hunter for 2 games. So I think it's a bigger issue right now than it probably will be, but it is a concern because the Cavs seem to, in certain instances, and you go back to the playoff game, you can go back to the playoff series, you can go back to even the Knicks game in the opener last night against Boston. They just, and I don't know the reason why, maybe you do, Justin, and I don't. They just seem to have these random one-off games or stretches of games where they just decide it's hero ball time. And, I understand it a little bit more now because Darius isn't in and they're trying to incorporate Mobley more, and Donovan had the sore hamstring last night. But, as a team, they just seem to be settling and way too comfortable for settling for threes. There was a possession last night where in transition, DeAndre Hunter pulled up for a semi-contested transition 3 with 21 on the shot clock that just was completely unnecessary. And I know Kenny wants them to shoot more threes. I know the NBA is all about the volume of threes you take now. So I understand like the math behind it. But at the end of the day, like a semi-contested transition 3 isn't a good shot. Yeah. And DeAndre wasn't like he was on fire last night. Like, he's shooting 20-something% from beyond the arc and 30% from the floor to start the season. So, maybe he's not the guy to be taking heat check threes. I think Mobley, and we'll talk about Mobley in a little more detail in a second, has just settled for too many jump shots, especially when teams are apparently very willing to let him shoot those open threes. So it's less of a concern because I know when guys come back, it should look a lot better and they should get back into the flow. But as it stands right now, I just think they're settling way too often for jump shots. They're not having the proper balance of attacking versus, hey, this three's open because they want me to shoot the three. Don't take it because it's open. Take it because it's the best shot we can get to on a possession. And I don't think they're running their offense through the first option very frequently at all. And when that first option isn't there, you don't have to pull back and go ISO. And I don't have the exact numbers, Justin. I love doing podcasts with you because I don't have to be the numbers guy. I'm guy for once. And maybe the numbers and the data says I'm totally wrong. And I'll be the first to say my bad. But through 5 games, I've watched every possession at least twice. I try to go back and watch these. It feels like they're getting into the offense. If the defense cuts off the first option, it's pull it back. Let's go isolation. And I just don't love that from a personal standpoint. And I don't think it's the Cavs' most efficient version of basketball.
I don't think you need numbers to support it, right? Like, we know what Cavs basketball looks like. Last year, they got comparisons to those early 2010 Spurs, right? Like, it's beautiful basketball. It doesn't stick, right? And you know, I think sometimes we could see it go the other direction, right? Where they would almost let perfect be the enemy of good, where they would overpass it and, you know, turn down some good looks. Analogy. Right now, they're letting good be the enemy of excellent, right? Like, I think it's gone too far the other way, where they're selling for their first decent look. And to, you know, take it back to your brisket analogy, when you're experimenting and you're trying to get that recipe just right and figure out how long to leave it in and all that good stuff, what helps is if you have some go-to sides that you know that these are going to be money. And even if I'm choking down an overcooked brisket, at least I know I'm going to have a
mac and
meal.
cheese is going to slap.
That is going to absolutely hit. And right now they're missing those bread and butter plays, right? Like, we talked about it a little bit last night, but I just feel like I expect to see a lot of Evan Mobley as a hub. Right? Like, have him up top, whether it be at the nail, whether it be above the 3-point line, dribble handoffs. A lot of those staples of the offense just feel like they're not there. And you're right. Like, a lot of this is going to be attributed to no Darius, right? Like, you mentioned that we've seen it happen before in the playoffs, and I think the last 2 years in particular, Darius has been physically limited, right? Like, he was awesome against Miami. Like, those first 2 games, you could probably make an argument he was their best player, right?
I would make that hand up. You can't see my hand up. I would make that argument, Justin. I would.
But in the Indiana series, when he was playing, because he couldn't really stand with the toe situation, they had him basically kind of as a spot up option. Like, oh, let's use him, draw some attention. Hopefully we can benefit from his gravity. When he wasn't physically right against Orlando and Boston, he primarily played off ball. He wasn't the one initiating the offense, right? So we have seen that either when Darius is absent or when he's physically limited, they can't generate offense at a high level. Even last year, when they were historically great offensively, when Darius was off the court, they were league average offensively when you look at those on-off splits. So I do think they need to find ways to generate offense without him, whether that be, you know, when he is subbed out of the game or if he happens to be dealing with some ailment. But it almost feels like there's so much focus on trying to implement the new that they don't have that foundation of their go-to. Those bread and butter plays have been kind of neglected or pushed to the side a little bit.
And I would love to see, especially until Darius comes back, like Kenny go deep into his bag. Like, hey, Kenny, I know you want these guys to play a free form style, right? And you fully adopted the CLA training method, and you want these guys to play with that CLA mindset where you're reading and reacting to everything. No 2 things are ever the same. But you got this job because of your expansive playbook and your ability to put guys in certain positions where you think they could thrive offensively. I don't care if Donovan and Lonzo and Evan say, I don't want to run through a double action where the front side has a pick and roll, the back side's on a double, but that's really just a decoy to set up a ghost flare for the strike. I'm making just stuff off the fly.
Yeah.
But have them run through it. Like, let's get into some of that stuff, especially when Evan's in the game and Donovan's not right now, and you just don't have a ton of creators on the court. Like, let's utilize that offensive genius brain that's stuck inside there, Kenny, and make the guys run a couple of things. And you know what?
Totally agree. Yeah.
As a player and someone who played Division III, and, you know, wasn't like I was great or anything, but you know when you never complain with the coach? When it works. If you get easy shots, right? Like, we can complain about coaches all the time. And I think I played for the best Division III coach in the history of basketball. I'll die on that hill. So I didn't have many complaints. But you know when nobody complained about Coach O'Brien? When he was drawing up out of timeout plays or sideline out of bounds plays or individual sets that were guaranteed to get a good look. And he'd say, just trust me, throw the ball here. It's going to work. You do it. It works. And you go, you know what? He may have made us run 38 suicides yesterday, but I get it. I get it. You know what, Kenny? If they're going to get mad that you're taking them out of that freestyle offense, but it's working, trust me, they won't complain. Let's get to our next possible concern here, Justin. It's with Evan Mobley. He has been much more of a initiator than a recipient of offense this season with some mixed results. The points per game slightly up, the efficiency significantly down. We spent a lot of time on this last night, so I don't think we have to spend as much time here. If you want to hear that prolonged conversation, go check out the Chase Down Pod with Justin on the Chase Down Pod channels, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, you can find it. But how concerned are you that Evan Mobley may not look as good as we had hoped through 5 games in this new offensive role he's been put into?
I'm at a very low concern level when it comes to this because we've seen the flashes even in this stretch where it's like, oh God, he wasn't able to do that in the past, right? Like even just that first game against the Knicks, the shots that he was generating, some of the ball handling and all that, he wasn't capable of doing that just to get those shots off, right? Like, so I'm not concerned that the overall efficiency is down because we know that he can go back to that bread and butter stuff, right? Like we know that the foundation is there for a very efficient version of Evan Mobley. So I'm not surprised that some of this experimenting has gone sideways. And, you know, I think Kenny's saying, you know, that the rebounding was a point of emphasis and we saw what happened last night goes to show you that the same thing is probably true on the offensive end. I don't think he wants to have an offense that's as isolation heavy as it is. But when you have a team that, you know, is in a situation where it's their 4th game in 6 nights, they've traveled between each of these, it's their 4th city in 6 nights. Maybe you know, there was just a fatigue factor and those decision-making in tight windows and all that, the decision-making just got lazy and they've settled for these types of looks. Maybe that's it. That is what it is. But I'm not too concerned with Evan Mobley just because I do think that you can go back to that foundation. I do think things are, you know, if they go back to what they were running last year, that's going to work really well. And you can sprinkle in some of this new stuff. He's going to do better in those isolation situations because of his skill set. But it definitely looks like right now he's pressing a little bit. Like even the form on the jump shot, some of those in the 4th quarter, it kind of looked like it was going sideways. Like it was a bit of a sidewinder leaving his hand. I think he's rushing. I think he's pressing a little bit, and the whole team was pressing because things were just not working well. So I think that there's stuff that they can go back to, but overall, from a macro standpoint, I'm not that concerned.
It hasn't been pretty. I'm not going to lie. There have been a lot more ugly moments than great moments. I think when Evan's decisive and with a plan, he's been really efficient and really good. And maybe some shots haven't always gone in, but he's gotten looks that I think if you were to grade the shot quality, would be in the A, high B plus category. Like they were good looks. I think when he has to freestyle, that's where he gets kind of lost. I don't like the fact that his average distance on shots this year is 6.5 feet further back from the basket than it has been in the past. Yes, part of that is his increase in 3-point volume, but that shouldn't make it that drastic of a difference from his career average. It was 9.4 for his career prior to the season. It's 16 and change this season, Justin. And 16 of all the shots, that's what I don't want Evan Mobley taking a majority of. Like if you're going to be a heavy mid-range shooter, you have to be a DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant, someone who shoots 60+%. Dirk. Yeah, like there are rare exceptions where you can live with them taking so many mid-range jump shots. Even SGA, obviously a very different player style than an Evan Mobley, but like elite mid-range shooters can live in the mid-range. Evan Mobley on these mid-range pull-ups is shooting in the 30%. Like that's just not good. It's not a high quality enough shot to be at that efficiency. It's 5 games, granted, but even last year he wasn't a great mid-range jump shooter. And when he's shooting threes, as we mentioned earlier, teams are very content with allowing him to shoot those threes, Justin. And I think more than the necessity for Evan to be a competent 3-point shooter was teams had to respect it enough to create the spacing and him have the gravity to pull them out, which opens up everything else for their movement, their pace, their space, their cutting that has allowed the Cavaliers offense last year to be so efficient. This year, they just aren't even really respecting Evan on those jump shots. They're saying, hey, Ev, take those. We're okay. We'd rather you shoot from out there than put your head down and get a head of steam going towards the rim, because that's a lot more difficult for us to defend. So I haven't loved the results. I do like the aggressiveness. I think it'll be toned down when Darius comes back, so it's not all bad. There have been some good, but from a big picture standpoint, I want to see a more decisive Evan. I want to see Evan drive more, and it doesn't have to be the same kind of bag like an SGA. Like, Wemby's the only real 7-footer that is crossing dudes up on the perimeter, and Wemby's not a human. Wemby's a legitimate alien, so to expect a normal human being, Justin, to have that similar ability, like, it's just not fair. Evan's not Wemby, right? Like, we can both be Cavs fans and love the ceiling and the potential of Evan Mobley and understand that Wemby,
there's never been one.
And Evan, it's just not apples to apples. So I don't expect him to be like 5-6 times a game breaking dudes' ankles like AI on the perimeter. Like, I don't. But he should be a good enough dribbler to be able to get to a spot to where he wants to operate. And I want to ask you this question. Do you think, as of right now, 3:31 p.m., the day before Halloween on 2025, Evan Mobley knows what his spot on the court is? Where if he needed a bucket to save humanity, he would say, pass me the rock here.
I think to some extent, like, I think he really loves that little turnaround, like getting into the middle of the paint, coming over that right shoulder and getting that little hook shot up. And that, they kind of had a variation of that on that opening, possession against Boston, where he's coming from the weak side corner. They set a screen for him. He got the switch. He shot over Derek White. He got a little deeper than he normally does on those spots. But I think that is something that he's really comfortable with. But the thing with Mobley is his offensive skill set and what he is able to do is special for a big man. It's not special for a wing. And I think sometimes he's being used a little bit too much like a wing. And it almost reminds me of when the Bucks were experimenting with Giannis as a point guard. Some of that paid dividends when he went back to playing as a power forward, right? Like you can see he's more advanced when he's driving the basketball and all that. But they're not asking him to bring the ball up and create possession after possession after possession. We're seeing a little bit too much of that from the Cavs. So I think getting him back into the role that he's comfortable with, but sprinkling in the flair of what he's able to do in isolation or that self-creation is how you get this to the next level and how you get him back in the comfort zone where he's getting to those go-to shots that he has.
One last thing on Mobley, we'll move on here. But some players get energized, get going when they get others involved. And Evans' assists are up. He's averaging 4.6 assists per game. That's an assist and a half, essentially, above where he was last year. And Evans a very good passer, and he's made huge strides in that part of his game. And I'm curious if instead of right from the get-go saying, Ev, go score, if he'd be better off in a facilitator role earlier, where he just comes in with the mindset of, I'll get my chance to get some buckets, but I want to get Don going. I want to get DeAndre going. I want to help get Jarrett going early. And once he gets a couple assists and gets kind of into the flow of the game, if then he'd be more comfortable going into attack mode. You've seen LeBron does that all the time. LeBron wants everyone else to eat first because he knows he's going to eat at the end. And even if Evan may not be the Cavs closer, that's still Donovan and Darius category when Darius is healthy. Maybe he'd be best suited, instead of being the first to eat, the second or third to eat, but being the first in line to help everyone else get their food early on. And now I'm getting hungry. We talked about brisket.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, you are killing me right now.
I didn't mean to do that, but I hadn't really thought of it till we were talking. And I'm not going to pretend to know Evan that well. I know some of the guys pretty well. Evan's a soft-spoken guy. We've had a couple conversations, but nothing where I could give you any real detailed insight into his mindset. But I'm curious if maybe he would feel more comfortable, because he's never been a score-first guy, right, Justin? Mm-hmm. He's never been that guy where the offensive load was all on his shoulders. So maybe he just isn't yet at this point. He's still young, by the way. Like, sometimes we forget he's still 24 years old. Like, he hasn't even officially turned 25. It's a lot of pressure on him. And I'm not shying away from the expectations I have from Evan. I just think maybe he'd feel more comfortable in the flow of the game if his initial role was to get other guys involved before he took his turn at the table.
Yeah, that's why I want to see more of that, dribble handoff type sets being reintegrated into the Cavs offense, because that gives him, some authority on, hey, I'm going to pull this for myself. It's almost like an RPO in football, right? Like, I recognize that I have an advantage. I'm going to attack. And particularly in those situations, it causes the defender to come up because they're so worried about whoever's coming off the screen. In this instance, let's say Donovan. When they come up that far, that allows Mobley to take that shoulder and take that long stride and get by him, right? Like use that length to leverage and get to the basket, finish with the left hand. Like he's so good with those types of possessions. I'd like to see more of it. And I really think that that's the next evolution of this team, is figuring out how to get Mobley involved when Don's cooking. Because I think to that third quarter against the Knicks, Donovan got going. He's hitting all those shots, but all of a sudden, Mobley's not really getting the touches. He's not involved. The key to me is when Darius is going, when Donovan's going, or when Evan's going, you need to leverage those other pieces to keep that fire going, to continue to fuel it. Because when Donovan's cooking, he's able to, expose guys in isolation, get those shots off. What if we got him a few easy shots by getting him a handoff from Mobley? Like just getting Mobley involved in those touches to keep Donovan going. I think that helps those runs be less burdensome on Donovan Mitchell, and also make them a little bit more sustainable and make sure that everybody else stays involved. I think that is really something to strive for this regular season.
Yeah, last point on Mobley, playing off what you just said. If Don's hot, I want him in as many actions as possible with Evan, because you're either going to have to send an extra guy at Don to get the ball out of his hands, which is then going to put Evan in a 4-on-3. And I like my chances with Evan in the decision-making role in a 4-on-3, 3-on-2, whatever the advantage is. Or Evan's going to set a good screen and Don's going to get to turn the corner and get downhill in the zone, which always leads to terrific results. So yeah, like hot Don doesn't necessarily mean ISO Don. And I still think there are other ways for Donovan to cook while keeping other guys involved. We got to take a quick break here, Justin. And this break is brought to us by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers on FanDuel have an incredible opportunity. You can bet $5 as a new customer on anything you want. And if that $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use however you want across the app. Yes, you heard me right. That was not a mistake. A $5 bet, if it wins for a new customer, results in $300 in bonus bets to use however you want across the app. So what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com/UCSS and get in on the action today. All right, Justin, as we wrap this up, we're going to do a quick the good, the bad, the ugly. We've talked about the good already. Actually, we kind of talked about
I was going to say, we've been a little more focused on the bad.
Yeah, so let's do the good and the ugly. We've done the bad. The floor is yours. Give me a good through the first 5 games of the season that you want to talk about. You can take it in any direction you want. And then instead of the ugly, let's call it the I still have a question about the undecided. So you got the good and the undecided. Then I'll do mine, and then we'll wrap up here.
Yeah, I don't want to default to even talking about any of the good with Mobley, Donovan, or Allen, because, they've had their highs, they've had their lows, but we know what they bring to the table and we know what they're working towards. The good I'll go with is I've been impressed with both Craig Porter Jr. and Tyrese Proctor, particularly when, we have some concerns about ball handling and potential guard depth for this team. I've been pleased with their poise. I think Craig is looking more mature than he ever has. I like his decision-making out there. Outside of one bad shift against the Knicks, he has largely been a net positive for them. That's a really, really encouraging sign. And, the biggest thing for him is the outside shot, right? Like he was someone that did get the rebounds. He'll get you some assists as a combo guard. Like he's able to fill up a box sheet, but the outside shot was the question. Those reps with the charge seem to be paying off. He looks like a much, much more confident shooter, and I'm happy about that. And Tyrese Proctor, for a rookie, I like the poise. The shot's going to be a little streaky sometimes, but that he has a lot of shooting talent. But I just like his decision-making and poise. I think the defense has been solid on ball. Off ball, he's got some work to do on that end without a doubt. But he's someone that I can see, if he's putting in the work in practice and doing the progression that you'd hope for, I think he could start earning some minutes and opportunities, because those opportunities are inevitably going to come, whether it be injuries or resting Lonzo Ball on back-to-backs.
And give me your undecided on. We'll do them both back-to-back.
Undecided, let's go DeAndre Hunter as self-creator. I've seen parts that I like. Career high in assists against the Detroit Pistons. There's encouraging things there. There are other times when the decision-making looks like, hey, you spent too much time with the Atlanta Hawks. I think that there is, once again, a learning curve when it comes to DeAndre Hunter. I like having him as somebody that you can go to when the offense is stagnant, but I think we're going to that a little too soon, right? Like when you have a small backcourt, when you face playoff defenses, you need to have guys that can create in the front court to take that pressure off of them. We know Evan Mobley is going to be a big part of that equation. DeAndre Hunter can be part of that equation, but we're going to need to iron out some of this decision making.
My good is Sam Merrill. And I know he's hurt, and it's such a bummer because he was off to such an incredible start. And through 4 games, Justin, he led the NBA in total 3-point makes with 18. He was shooting above 50% from the floor. Any question, any concern we had about Sam and that contract he signed this summer was evaporated over the course of the first 6 games, or first 6 days that he played, 4 games, 3.5. He got hurt against Detroit. And the fact that he got hurt on a play where he takes a charge on Jaylen Duran. Is it Duran or Duran? I pronounce it wrong. Duran. Yeah. It's one of those ones where I know I'm right, but then I question myself and it sounds weird. Jaylen Duran's an absolute physical specimen. He is 6'10", 240 pounds. I took a friend to the game last year when Cleveland was playing Detroit, and I was able to get my friend down on the court pregame, and he goes, "Who is that?" I go, "It's Jaylen Duran." He goes, "That dude must be a monster." I'm like, "Well, he's pretty good." But yeah, he's one of those guys that doesn't look like he belongs. He looks like he belongs on the Mr. Olympia stage, not a basketball court. So for Sam Merrill, the undersized, skinny white kid that no one thinks can play defense, to step in and take a charge on a player like that, Justin, the Cavs may be soft. They have to prove us wrong until we know they're not. A play like that shows me that Sam Merrill's not soft. Right? Like that, putting your body on the line. And for anyone who wants to say it's one play, whatever, go find the biggest dude you can in prison and tell him to run right into you and you try to take your shot. Like just, and you tell me how
I thought you were going to say like run into someone on the sidewalk, just
it needs to be someone big
and put a shoulder in them.
Listen, if you could find a 6'10", 240-pound musclehead just walking down the street, good luck. Or go find a former Division I linebacker to just run full speed. Like, I know I'm kind of making a joke about it, but I'm dead serious. Like, those hurt. And that's a tough-ass play from Sam Merrill. Like, legitimately a tough-ass play. And he deserves all the credit in the world for what he's been. And hopefully it's a quick, speedy recovery. And I think Sam's a guy just in general, Justin, he plays up to the competition and up to the level of talent he has around him. And he's a guy that I think actually fits really well into the starting lineup. I love the way Kenny's using him as a screener. We talked about that first play against Brooklyn where he was the initial screener, then got a back screen, caught the Brooklyn defense sleeping, wide open corner 3. There's just a lot of things you can do with Sam, and he's answered every question we've had. Is it sustainable? Is he going to lead the NBA in threes this year? Probably not. I don't want to say no, but probably not. But he's been awesome. And then my one I'm not sure about yet is Lonzo Ball's jump shot and some of the shot selection he's taking. I love what Lonzo brings to the court. His passing is otherworldly. I saw a stat before the year. He's only run 387 pick and rolls in his entire NBA career, Justin, which is like absurdly low. And I hope that's right. I saw it on Twitter from an account I trust. So like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here, but that's like less than Tyrese Maxey or Dame Lillard running a season. Like just to give context, like that's an incredibly low number. And he's not going to use the pick and roll. That's fine. But he's taking some pull-up threes here that I'm like, Lonzo, I don't know if I love that jump shot from you. And right now he's shooting in the 20% from 3. So, like, you could take some bad shots if you're going to make them. You can't be taking some bad shots if you're shooting in the 20% because it kind of negates and nullifies all the good he brings elsewhere on the court. So I'm not selling my Lonzo stock at all. I'm actually fascinated. I cannot wait to see the Lonzo, Darius, Donovan trio in the backcourt if we ever get a chance to see that lineup combination, especially with a Hunter and Mobley, if they can figure out the rebounding. Like, that's the lineup that I'm most intrigued to see when guys are healthy. But my indecision and my I don't know is maybe Lonzo, after missing 2 full seasons, just isn't the shooter we thought he was. And if he can't shoot at the level where we thought, which is mid-30s, which is not even that high of a bar, and he's not going to play in the pick and roll, and he's not a point guard that's going to get into the paint, our team's just going to not guard him. And if they're going to not guard him, does that negate his ability to be an otherworldly passer? So that's kind of my unknown at this point, if you want to respond real quick to either of those.
That's fair. The Sam note, 100%. He has continued to exceed all of my expectations for him. I think he's a tremendous role player. I think the Cavs are very lucky to have him. Lonzo's shot selection almost worries me more than the shot itself because, like, fluctuations for jump shooters, particularly ones that are, kind of around league average, that's going to happen. but his shot selection on some of these, like in transition, it reminds me of when Max Strus came back from injury last year, where all of a sudden, like the Cavs have been playing this beautiful ball movement style all season long. They're getting these great shots, and then Max is just coming down in transition, and the first time he touches it, boom, he's shooting right away. Right. Like it went up so fast, and Max adjusted to it beautifully. Like I thought Max had his best season as a Cavalier, maybe best season ever last year. But it was like, hey, trust us, trust the system. We're going to get better looks. And it stood out so much then. Lonzo's shot selection right now doesn't stand out because we're seeing Dean Wade take those shots. We're seeing DeAndre Hunter take those shots. We're seeing Mobley take those shots. Donovan's taking those shots. So I want to see the shot diet get better. And when the shot selection improves, then I can start like properly analyzing the results.
Yeah, fair. It's just some of the shots. I'm like, why, Lonzo? You're so good. You're so smart. Like, why? You're playing like LaMelo right now. We need Lonzo. So I want to read one comment from the chat real quick. Never Bloom says Justin is awesome. Never Bloom. I could not agree more. Justin, tell the people out there where they can find you when you're not joining me on the Ultimate Cavalier Show.
Absolutely. You guys found this podcast, so you know where to find podcasts. Wherever you found that, you can find the Chase Down podcast. We go live twice a week on the Cavs YouTube channel as well. So if you want to like and subscribe, follow us over there. We have a lot of fun. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm not that active there, but slap the Cavs in Canada, Cavs Canada, you'll find me there.
It's right under his name on the screen. Justin, I appreciate you for joining us. Check out the Chase Down pod we did last night for an extended reaction to the Cavaliers' loss to the Celtics. And as always, follow Justin, follow us, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show starting at 11 a.m. For Justin Rowan, I'm Mikey McNuggets. We'll see you later. Peace.